Hello everyone, here is Afra Siab. Today we are going to solve Cambridge IGCSE Physics Paper 2 Multiple Choice Extended held on May-June 2017 and paper code is 0625 with variant 22. So let's start from question number 1. Question number 1. What is the most accurate and precise method to measure the thickness of a coin? So here we have to measure the thickness of the coin. Which instrument is most accurate and precise? Option A. Using a micrometer screw gauge. B. Use a ruler and look at the scale perpendicularly. C. Use a top and balance. D. Use the displacement method with water in a measuring cylinder. For the measurement of the thickness of the coin, we use the micrometer screw gauge. So option A is correct. Question number 2. A student determines the average speed of the bubble rising through the liquid at constant speed. When the student starts the stopwatch, the bubble is at position P. After 2.0 seconds, the bubble is at position Q. In this diagram, we can see that there is a point P and there is also a point Q. What is the speed of the bubble between P and Q? So here we have to find out the speed. The reading also given on the scale. We can measure distance from here and time is given. So we can easily find out the speed. I write here speed is equal to distance divided by time. At the point P, distance is 25.7 centimeter. While at the point Q, distance is 18.3 centimeter. Now we use this value of the distance and find out the speed. So speed will be equal to 25.7 minus 18.3 divided by time. Time is given here 2.0 second. So the speed will be equal to 3.7 meter per second. Now we see the options. It is given in option B. So option B is correct. Question number 3. The diagram shows the speed time graph for a toy car traveling in a straight line. So there is a speed time graph. What is the acceleration of the car during the first 2 seconds and what is the total distance that it travels? So here we have to find out the acceleration and the total distance. We know that acceleration is equal to the slope of speed time graph. So I write here acceleration is equal to delta V by delta T, where it is equal to V2 minus V1 over T2 minus T1. 2.0 second is at this point. We have to find out the acceleration from 0 to 2.0 second. So I take first point here at origin 0 and 0 and second point is here 2.0 and 4.0. Now I am going to put values here. Acceleration will be equal to 4.0 minus 0 divided by 2.0 minus 0. So acceleration will be equal to 2.0 meter per second square. So total distance is basically the area under this graph. I write here total distance is equal to area under graph. We can see here there are two right angle triangles. First one is this, while the second is on the other side. I label them 1 and 2 and find their areas. So area 1 plus area 2. area 1 will be equal to 1 over 2 base, which is time 2.0 multiplied by 4.0, plus area 2 will be 1 over 2. Time is from 2.0 second to 5.0 second, so it will be 3.0 multiplied by 4.0. So total distance will be equal to 4.0 plus 6.0, which is equal to 10, and the unit is meter. So the distance is equal to 10 meter and acceleration is equal to 2.0 meter per second square. Now we see the options. Option A 0.50 10, B 0.50 20, C 2.0 10. So C option is correct. Question number 4. In which pair are both quantities measured in Newton? Option A force and pressure, B force and weight, C mass and pressure, D mass and weight. So first of all, force is measured in Newton, but the pressure is measured in Pascal. So option A is incorrect. Option B, force is measured in Newton and also weight is measured in Newton. So this option is correct. Again, option C, mass is measured in kilogram, due to which this option is incorrect. And in option D, again mass is measured in kilogram. So this is also incorrect. Only correct option is B. Question number 5. The masses of a measuring cylinder before and after pouring some liquid into it are shown in the diagram. What is the density of the liquid? So here we have to find out the density of the liquid. Density is equal to mass over volume. It means that we have to find out the mass of the liquid and volume of the liquid. Here first measuring cylinder is before pouring some liquid. So the initial mass and initial volume I write here. M1 is equal to 80 gram and V1 is equal to 0 cubic centimeter. After pouring some liquid, mass is 180 gram. So I write here M2 is equal to 180 gram, which is given here, while the volume is at this level. So this is basically 140 cubic centimeter. So V2 will be equal to 140 cubic centimeter. We have to find out the density of liquid only. So I write here mass of liquid, it will be equal to M2 minus M1, 180 minus 80 gram, which is equal to 100 gram. Next, we also have to find out the volume of the liquid. It will be equal to 140 minus 0, 140 cubic centimeter. So the density will be equal to 100 gram divided by 140 cubic centimeter. Now we see the options. Option A 100 over 120 gram per cubic centimeter, B 100 over 140 gram per cubic centimeter. So B option is correct. Question number 6. A spring which obeys Hooke's law has an unstretched length of 10 centimeter. A load of 20 Newton is hung from the spring. The new length of the spring is 36 centimeter. What is the spring constant K of the spring? So here the load and lengths are given and we have to find out the spring constant. We know that according to Hooke's law, F is equal to Kx, where F is the load that we hung from the spring. So F will be equal to 20 Newton. Here the unstretched length is given, that is 10 centimeter. I write here L1 is equal to 10 centimeter and the new length is 36 centimeter. So L2 will be equal to 36 centimeter. Here X is basically the extension. The extension in length. So the extension in the length will be equal to L2 minus L1. New length minus unstretched length. So it will be equal to 36 minus 10, 26 centimeter. Now we can easily find out the value of K. K will be equal to F over X, where F is given 20 Newton divided by X is 26 centimeter. So it will be equal to 0.77 Newton per centimeter. Now we see the options. Option A 0.56 Newton per centimeter, B 0.77 Newton per centimeter. So B option is correct from here. Question number 7. A car travels forward along a straight horizontal road. Only the horizontal forces acting on it are shown. So there are forces that is in upward direction, driving force, and in backward direction there is air resistance and friction. The length of each arrow represents the size of each force. So this arrow basically represents the size of these forces. From here we can see that the force due to the air resistance and friction is larger as compared to the force that is due to driving force. How do these forces affect the motion of the car? Option A. The car moves at constant speed. B. The car moves backwards. C. The car slows down. D. The car's forward speed increases. So first of all, in this case, the air resistance force plus friction, it is larger as compared to the driving forces. So this car will slows down. It cannot move at constant speed because here forces are not balanced. So C option is correct from here. Question number 8. The diagram shows a wooden beam of weight 20 Newton. The center of mass of the beam is labeled M. There is a pivot at one end of the beam. The beam is kept horizontal by an upward force F. So there is a wooden beam whose weight is 20 Newton and there is also a pivot at one end. There is a force that is acting in the upward direction and its magnitude is F. What is the magnitude of F? We have to find its value. So here I use the concept of conservation of movement, that the total clockwise movement will be equal to the total anti-clockwise movement. So I write here clockwise movement will be equal to anti-clockwise movement. Clockwise movement is basically caused by the 20 Newton weight and the anti-clockwise movement is caused by this force. And movement is the product of force and perpendicular distance from the pivot point. So I write here clockwise movement will be equal to 20 Newton multiplied by distance is given here, which is 1.2 meter. So I write here 1.2 meter. It will be equal to F multiplied by, in this case distance is 2.0 meter. So there will be 2.0. F will be equal to 20 multiplied by 1.2 divided by 2.0. So F will be equal to 12 Newton. Now we see the options. Option A, it is given 12 Newton, B 20 Newton, C 30 Newton, D 33 Newton. So option A is correct. Question number 9. A ball of mass 2.0 kilogram is traveling at a speed of 12 meter per second. It moved towards an object of mass 3.0 kilogram which is at rest. So there is a ball whose mass is 2.0 kilogram and it is traveling at a speed of 12 meter per second. It is moving towards another object whose mass is 3.0 kilogram and it is at rest. It means that its velocity is equal to 0. The ball hits the object and sticks to it. Which row gives the total momentum and the speed of both objects immediately after the collision? So here we have to find out the final momentum and the final speed when both of these objects stick together. So here, first of all, in order to find the speed of both of these objects, I use here the law of conservation of total momentum, that the total momentum before collision is equal to the total momentum after collision. So I write here total momentum before collision is equal to total momentum after collision. Before collision, I write here m1 v1 plus m2 v2. It will be equal to m1 v1 prime plus m2 v2 prime, where m1 v1 is the momentum of the ball while m2 v2 is the momentum of the object. Now I am going to put values here. The mass of the ball is given, which is 2.0 multiplied by v1 12 plus m2 is 3.0 multiplied by 0, because the object is at rest. It will be equal to, as both of these objects stick together, so they move with the common speed. Therefore, I write here v1 prime is equal to v2 prime and it is equal to v. Therefore, here will be m1 plus m2 into v. From here we have to find out the value of v. So I write here 2.0 multiplied by 12 plus this term will be 0. And m1 is 2.0 plus 3.0 multiplied by v. V will be equal to 24 divided by 5.0. So V is equal to 4.8 meter per second. Next, we also have to find out the total momentum after the collision. The total momentum before the collision and after the collision will be same. So from here, I can guess that total momentum before the collision is 2.0 multiplied by 12 plus 3.0 multiplied by 0. This is the momentum after the collision. So I write here final momentum. And this will be equal to 24 and the unit is kilogram meter per second. So this is the total momentum after the collision. Now we see the options. Option A 0 4.8, B 0 8.0, C 24 4.8. So C option is correct from here. Question number 10. An object falls from a height of 5.0 meter. Air resistance can be ignored. As it hits the ground, the object has 750 of kinetic energy. What is its mass? So here we have to find out the mass when the kinetic energy and the height is given. Here I use the concept that loss in potential energy is equal to gain in kinetic energy. So I write here loss in potential energy is equal to gain in kinetic energy. The value of the kinetic energy is given 750 joule and we know that potential energy is mgh. Here I write 750. Then we have to find out the value of mass. Mass will be equal to 750 divided by g and h. It will be 750 and the value of g is 10 meter per second square, where the height is given 5.0 meter. So mass will be equal to 15 kilogram. Now we see the options. Option A 15 kilogram, B 50 kilogram, C 75 kilogram, D 150 kilogram. From here, option A is correct. Question number 11. An electric generator produces an electromotive force EMF of 200 volt and produces a current of 3.0 ampere in the circuit. The generator is driven by a engine with a power of 2.4 kilowatt. What is the efficiency of the generator? So here we have to find out the efficiency of the generator. Efficiency is equal to output power divided by input power. Here input power is given, which is 2.4 kilowatt. So I write here input power is equal to 2.4 kilowatt. This will be equal to 2400 watt. We don't know the value of the output power, but we can find out this by using the value of the current and electromotive force. So I write here output power will be equal to IV, current is given 3.0 ampere, multiplied by 200. So this will be equal to 600 watt. Now from here we can easily find out the efficiency. So efficiency will be equal to output power, which is 600, divided by input 2400, multiplied by 100, because we have to find out the percentage efficiency. So this will be equal to 25%. Now we see the options. Option A 2.8%, B 25%, C 28%, D 36%. From here option B is correct. Question number 12. The diagram shows athletes training by stretching springs. Each spring has the same stiffness. Which athlete does the most work? So here we have to find out which athlete does the most work. In the option A, there is one spring stretched by 0.60 meter. So work done in this case will be equal to 1 over 2 kx square. Here there is only one spring, so k will be equal to 1k, while x will be equal to 0.60 meter. I write here k prime to differentiate between them. So work will be equal to 1 over 2 k into 0.60 square. Then the value of work will be equal to 0.18 joule multiplied by k. In the option B, there is also one spring stretched by 0.80 meter. So in this case, work will be equal to 1 over 2 k prime x square, where again there is only one spring. So here will be k and x is 0.80 square. So work will be equal to 0.32 joule multiplied by k, where k is the spring constant. In the option C, there are two springs stretched by 0.60 meter. So I write here k prime is equal to 2k because there are two springs, and x is equal to 0.60 meter. So work will be equal to 1 over 2 2k and 0.60 square. It will be equal to 0.36 multiplied by k. In the last option D, again there are two springs stretched by 0.80 meter. So again k prime is equal to 2k and extension x is equal to 0.80 meter. So work is equal to 1 over 2 k prime x square. It will be 1 over 2 2k 0.80 square. So this will be equal to 0.64 joule multiplied by k. We can see all of these work and see that only work is more in the case of option D, when there are two springs and these are stretched by 0.80 meter, which is equal to 0.64. So D option is correct from here. Question number 13. Question number 13. 4 different liquids are poured into 4 containers. The diagram shows the depth and the density of the liquid in each container. In which container is the pressure on its base is greatest? So where the pressure is greater? In the option A, we can see here the depth is given 10 centimeter and the liquid density is 3.1 gram per cubic centimeter. So pressure is basically P is equal to density multiplied by G and depth. First of all, I find out the pressure for the container A. So I write here PA is equal to density is given, which is 3.1 multiplied by G multiplied by depth, which is given 10 centimeter. So pressure will be equal to 31 Pascal multiplied by G. Next, PB is equal to pressure for the B container. Here density is 1.2 gram per cubic centimeter and depth is given 20 centimeter. So I write here 1.2 multiplied by G and 20. It will be equal to 24 Pascal multiplied by G. For the container C, pressure will be, here density is 1.3 multiplied by G and the value of depth is 30 centimeter. So pressure will be equal to 39 Pascal multiplied by G. In the option D, density is 0.80 gram per cubic centimeter and depth is 40 centimeter. So the pressure due to the container D, it will be equal to 0.8 multiplied by G and 40 centimeter. It will be equal to 32 multiplied by G. Again the unit of pressure is Pascal. Now we see all of these pressure and observe that the pressure in the case of C container is larger as compared to the A, B and D. From here, option C is correct. Question number 14. Brownian motion is observed when using a microscope to look at smoke particles in the air, which causes the smoke particles to move at random. Option A. Smoke particles are hit by the air molecules. B. Smoke particles are moved by the convection currents in the air. C. Smoke particles have different weights and fall at different speeds. D. Smoke particle hit the wall of the container. From here, option A is correct, that the smoke particles are hit by the air molecules. Question number 15. A student blows air through a liquid using a straw. This causes the liquid to evaporate quickly and therefore to cool. Which statement explains why the remaining liquid cool? Option A. Slower moving molecules are carried away by the air bubbles. B. The air molecule conduct heat from the liquid. C. The air set up convection current in the liquid. D. The molecule with most energy leave the liquid. So first of all, evaporation is basically the escaping of the liquid molecules from the surface. If I consider here is liquid, then the high energy molecules escape from the surface, leaving only the low energy molecule. When there are only low energy molecule on the surface, as a result the temperature decreases, due to which the liquid cools down. So the reason behind the liquid to cool down is that the molecule with most energy leave the liquid. From here, option D is correct. Question number 16. What is meant by the specific latent heat of fusion of ice? Option A. The energy needed to change unit mass of ice into water at constant temperature. B. The energy needed to change unit volume of the ice into water at constant temperature. C. The energy needed to produce unit temperature increase of the unit mass of ice. D. The energy needed to produce unit temperature increase of unit volume of the ice. So the specific latent heat of fusion of ice is basically the energy needed to change unit mass of the ice into water at constant temperature. So option A is correct from here. Question number 17. Equal masses of two different liquids are put into identical beakers. Liquid 1 is heated for 100 seconds and the liquid 2 is heated for 200 seconds by the heater of same power. Each liquid has the same rise in temperature. Which statement is correct? Option A. Each beaker of the liquid has the same thermal capacity. B. Each beaker of the liquid receives the same energy. C. Liquid 1 receives more energy than the liquid 2. D. Thermal capacity of the liquid 1 is less than the thermal capacity of the liquid 2. So first of all, we know that Q is equal to mc delta T, where C is equal to Q over m delta T. Here it is given that each liquid has the same rise in temperature. It means that change in temperature remains same for both of liquid. And also here the liquid 1 is heated for 100 seconds and liquid 2 is heated for 200 seconds. It means that heat for the first liquid is equal to Q, then the heat for the second liquid will be equal to 2Q because it is heated double time as compared to liquid 1. So C1 will be equal to Q over m delta T, where C2 is equal to 2Q over m delta T. It means that C2 is greater than C1. Now we see the options. Option A. Each beaker of the liquid has the same thermal capacity, which is incorrect because here C2 is greater than C1. Option B is also incorrect because here each beaker of the liquid receives the same energy, which is not possible. Option C is that liquid 1 receives more energy than the liquid 2. This is also incorrect because here liquid 2 gains more energy as compared to liquid 1. So only the correct option is D, that the thermal capacity of the liquid 1 is smaller as compared to the thermal capacity of the liquid 2. Question number 18. A copper bar and a wooden bar are joined. A piece of paper is wrapped tightly around the joint. The bar is heated strongly at the center for a short time and the paper goes brown on one side only. Which side goes brown and what does this show about the wood and the copper? So first of all, when we heat this paper, then what will happen? As the wood is insulator and copper is conductor. In the insulator, there is no free electron due to which the conduction of heat cannot take place. So the wood turns brown while the copper is a conductor and it contains a large number of free electrons due to which there is easy for the heat to transfer in the copper. It means that the side of the wood gets brown and wood is the insulator and copper is conductor. Now we see the option. Brown side, wood and copper. Option A, copper, conductor, insulator. This is incorrect. Option B, copper, insulator and conductor. This is also incorrect because brown side is wood. C, wood, conductor and insulator. D, wood, insulator and conductor. So option D is correct. Question number 19. Different waves hit barrier with different sized gaps. The wave will diffract. In which diagram does the greatest spreading occur? So there will be the diffraction when the wave passing through the barrier. And more diffraction will occur only when the gap is comparable with the wavelength or the gap is smaller as compared to the wavelength. So in the first option A, we can see here that gap is 2.0 centimeter while the wavelength is 1.0 centimeter. Here the gap is larger as compared to the wavelength, so there will be less bending. I write here less spreading. In the option B, we can see here the gap is 2.0 centimeter and the wavelength is 2.0 centimeter. So here gap is equal to wavelength. So there will be large spreading. In the option C, here the gap is 3.0 centimeter while the wavelength is 1.0 centimeter. So the gap is larger as compared to wavelength. There will be less spreading. In the last option D, again the gap is 3.0 centimeter and wavelength is 2.0 centimeter. The gap is larger as compared to the wavelength, so there will be less spreading. From here, only B option is correct. In the case of option B, there is large spreading because the gap is comparable with the wavelength. Question number 20. The incomplete ray diagram shows the two rays of light that have passed from one point on the object through thin converging lens. So there is thin converging lens and two rays of light is passing through this lens. Which type of image is formed and on which side of the lens is it formed? Type of image, which side of lens? Option A, real on the left, B, real on the right, C, virtual on the left, C, virtual on the right. In order to form the image by this converging lens, we have to extend the rays in backward direction. Because on the right hand side we can see that both of rays does not meet at a point. It means that the image will be formed on the left side, and which kind of image it is. Now we extend these rays in backward direction so that they form an image at a single point. I am going to extend them like that. At this point both of rays meet. It means that at this point image will be formed. It is the position of the image and it is formed on the left side of the converging lens. Now we see from here that which kind of image it is. This is virtual image because it is formed on the same side as that of the object. So this is virtual image and it is formed on the left side. Now we see the options. In the option C, image is virtual and which side of lens it is on the left. So C option is correct from here. Question number 21. Which diagram shows what happens when a ray of white light passes through a prism? So there is a prism and the white light is passing through the prism. What happened to the white light? In the option A, we can see here as the white light is passing through the prism, it disperses only when it is out of the prism. But when the white light passing through the prism, it will disperse inside the prism. So option A is incorrect. In the option B, we can see here inside the prism there is the dispersion of white light. But when it comes out of the prism, then there is also a spectrum. But this should be parallel to the incident white light. So this is also incorrect. In the option C, this is also incorrect. And option D is correct because inside the prism there is the dispersion and also when it comes out of the prism there forms a spectrum. And these lines are parallel to the white light. So option D is correct from here. Question number 22. Light travels in a vacuum and then enters the glass block. The speed of the light in the glass block is 2.0 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Which statement about the speed of light is correct? A. The speed in the vacuum is 1.5 times the speed in the glass. B. The speed in the glass is the same as the speed in the vacuum. C. The speed in the glass is 1.5 times the speed in the vacuum. D. The speed in the glass is 1.0 into 10 to the power 8 times the speed in the vacuum. So first of all, it is given that the speed of light in the glass block is 2.0 into 10 to the power 8. So I write here V is equal to 2.0 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Next we know that the light travels in a vacuum with the speed of light. So C will be equal to 3.0 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. Now we have to find out the ratio of C over V. It will be equal to 3.0 into 10 to the power 8 divided by 2.0 into 10 to the power 8, and it is equal to 1.5. It means that C is equal to 1.5 multiplied by V. It means that the speed of light is 1.5 times the speed in the glass. So option A is correct from here, which shows that the speed of light is 1.5 times the speed in the glass. Question number 23. A fire alarm is not loud enough and the pitch is too low. An engineer adjusts the alarm so that it produces a louder note of higher pitch. What effect does this have on the amplitude and on the frequency of the sound? So what will be the effect on the amplitude and frequency? By increasing the pitch and also by the louder note. So first of all, when there is louder note and high pitch. Loudness is basically related with the amplitude. I write here, loudness is directly proportional with the amplitude. When the loudness increase, amplitude also increase. So in this case, amplitude will be larger. And also the pitch is related with the frequency. Pitch is directly proportional to frequency. When the pitch is high, the frequency should be high. So in this case, there will be high frequency. Now we see the option. Option A, amplitude is larger and frequency is greater. B, larger and smaller. C, smaller and greater. D, smaller and smaller. From here, option A is correct. Question number 24. A student demagnetizes a magnetized steel bar. He places a bar in a solenoid connected to a power supply. He then removes the bar from the solenoid. Which row indicates the most effective way of demagnetizing the bar? So here we have to demagnetize the bar. Type of the power supply, speed to remove the bar. Option A, AC fast. B, AC slow. C, DC fast. D, DC slow. First of all, here we have to demagnetize the steel bar. And for the magnetization and demagnetization, we use only the AC power supply, not the DC power supply. From here, option C and D, both of these are incorrect. Now we have to check that either A or B is correct. For the demagnetization, we have to slow the speed of the bar so that the current decreases, due to which there will be the demagnetization. It means that the speed to remove the bar should be slow. From here, option B is correct. For the demagnetization of the bar, we have to use the AC power supply and the speed of removing the bar should be slow. Question number 25. A magnet near a coil of wire is attached to the coil only when there is a current in the coil. Which statement explains this force of attraction? Option A. The coil of wire has its own gravitational field. B. The coil of wire is made from the soft iron. C. The current in the coil wire creates a magnetic field. D. The current in the coil of wire induces a charge on the magnet. So first of all, here is the magnet. Magnet has two poles, south and north. Next, there is a coil that is close to the magnet. And there is a current that is passing through this coil. When the current is passing through this coil, there will be the creation of the magnetic field. So there will be the magnetic field in this coil. So this magnetic field also passes through the bar magnet. In this case, due to which there is a attraction between both of these. It means that the current in the coil creates a magnetic field. So C option is correct. Question number 26. What is wrong with this label diagram of the permanent magnet? Option A. The cross section should be rectangular. B. The length should be greater than the diameter. C. The magnet should be made of steel. D. The north pole and the south pole should be reversed. So first of all, iron is used to make the temporary magnet and the steel is used for the permanent magnet. From here, option C is correct. So I label option C. Question number 27. A student tests the electrical conduction of the four materials: aluminium, iron, plastic and silver. Which material conduct electricity? So only those material conduct electricity that are conductor, that have excess of free electron. Option A. Aluminium, iron and silver only. B. Aluminium and silver only. C. Iron, silver and plastic only. D. Plastic only. From here, aluminium, iron and silver, all of these are conductor, but plastic is insulator. So the conductor contains free electron, due to which the conduction takes place in this material. It means that aluminium, iron and silver conduct electricity. From here, option A is correct. Question number 28. What is the unit of the charge? Option A. Ampere. B. Coulomb. C. Ohm. D. Volt. So the unit of the charge is coulomb. Option B is correct. Question number 29. An isolated metal sphere is positively charged. It is then brought near to another isolated metal sphere that is neutral. What happens to the charges on the neutral sphere as the positively charged sphere is brought close to it? So here is the positively charged sphere, and when this is brought close to the neutral matter sphere, what happens? As this metal sphere contains free electrons, because it's a metal and metal contains free electron, when this positively metal sphere brought closer to the neutral one, then the electrons come on this side, because there is the attraction between positive and the negative charges. Same charges repel each other while the opposite charges attract each other. So due to the attraction with the positively charged metal sphere, there will be the negative charges that appears on this side of the sphere, while there will be the same number of positive charges appear on the other side. Now we see the options. Option A. Some positive charges move to the left and some negative charges move to the right. Option B. Some positive charges move to the right and some negative charges move to the left. Option C. Some positive charges move to the right but the negative charges do not move. Option D. The positive charges do not move but some negative charges move to the left. Here we can see that these are the negative charges that move to the left, but the positive charges do not move. From here, option D is correct. Question number 30. Which diagram is the current voltage IV characteristic graph for a metallic conductor at constant temperature? Option A, B, C and D are shown. The metallic conductor obey Ohm's law, that V is directly proportional to I. The potential difference is directly proportional to the current, provided that temperature is constant. It means that the graph will be a straight line. From here, option D is correct. Question number 31. 4 circuit each contains 6 volt battery, a diode, an ammeter and a lamp. None of these component is faulty. Which circuit shows a possible ammeter reading? So there is option A. Here we can see that there is a battery of 6 volt. This is the positive terminal of the battery and there is the negative terminal. And this is the P side of the diode while the other is N side. The P side of the diode is connected with the positive terminal of the battery and the negative side is connected with the N-type terminal of the diode. It means that this diode is forward biased. When this diode is forward biased, there will be the greater reading on the ammeter, most current passing through the circuit. So here the reading on the ammeter is shown, that is 1.0 ampere. Now we see the option B. Here again, this is positive side and this is P. The P side of the diode is connected with the positive terminal of the diode, while the N side is connected with the negative terminal of the diode. Again, there is forward biasing. So there should be the maximum current passing through the circuit. But here the reading on the ammeter is 0 ampere. So this is incorrect. There should be the current that is passing through this circuit. Here is option C. Here we can see that this is the N side and this is positive. So positive is connected with the N. There will be the reverse biasing. So there will be no current passing through the circuit. But here it is shown that reading is 1.0 ampere. So this is incorrect. In the option D, we can see again, this is the N side and this is positive. There is reverse biasing, but the reading is minus 1.0 ampere. The value of the current can never be negative, so this is also incorrect. Only option A is correct. I circle option A. Question number 32. A student connects a variable potential divider potentiometer circuit. What happens to the reading on the voltmeter as the sliding terminal T is moved from R to S? Option A. It decreases from 12 volt to 0 volt. B. It increases from 0 volt to 12 volt. C. It remains at 0 volt. D. It remains at 12 volt. Here we can see that there is a voltmeter and the resistor. Both of these are connected in the parallel combination, and in the parallel combination the potential remains same and the value of current changes. So here the potential remains same. As the sliding contact reaches at the point S, then the voltage is maximum, which is 12 volt. It means that as this contact is moving from R towards the S, then the value of the potential increase from 0 volt to 12 volt. Now we see the option. Option B is given, which shows that it increases from 0 volt to 12 volt. So option B is correct. Question number 33. The diagram shows an electric circuit. There is an electric circuit. Here is resistance 10 ohm and there is also 20 ohm LDR. The current passing through here is 0.40 ampere. What is the potential difference across the LDR? So here we have to find out the potential difference. Here we can see that both of these components are connected in series, and in the series combination the current remains same, but the potential changes. First of all, we find out the potential across 10 ohm resistance. So according to Ohm's law, V is equal to IR. There I write V across the 10 ohm resistance will be equal to current multiplied by resistance R. Current is 0.40 multiplied by 10. So it will be equal to 4.0 volt. Next, we have to find out the total potential of this circuit. First of all, we have to find out the equivalent resistance. So the total resistance will be equal to 20 plus 10 because both of these are connected in series. So it will be equal to 30 ohm. Now I find out the potential across the whole circuit. So V total will be equal to I and RT. Current is again 0.40 multiplied by 30. So the total potential will be 12 volt. Now we have to find out the potential difference across 20 ohm LDR. So I write here potential difference that is across the whole circuit. It will be equal to V20 ohm plus V10 ohm. Because this is series circuit, all of these components are connected in series. Here the total potential will be equal to the potential across all of these components. So I use this formula and find out the potential across 20 ohm LDR. So I write here V20 ohm, it will be equal to total minus V10 ohm. So it will be 12 minus 4.0, which is 8.0 volt. From here, option B is correct. Question number 34. What does the symbol shown represent? Option A, AND gate, B, NOR gate, C, NOT gate, D, OR gate. So first of all, this bubble actually represents the NOT gate, while the whole symbol is basically for the OR gate. So when we apply NOT gate over the OR gate, there will be NOR gate. From here, option B is correct. Question number 35. What is the purpose of a relay? Option A, to change a large voltage into a small voltage. B, to change a small voltage into a large voltage. C, to use a large current to switch on a small current. D, to use a small current to switch on a large current. From here, option D is correct. The function of the relay is to use a small current to switch on a large current. Question number 36. Which device uses a split ring commutator? Option A, DC motor. B, relay. C, transformer. D, AC generator. So the split ring commutators are used in the DC motor. Option A is correct. Because in the AC generator there is a sinusoidal wave like this. But when we want to obtain only the DC current like this, then in this case we use the commutator that allow the direction of current from changing. So option A is correct from here. This is actually the wave for the current. Question number 37. Which particle has a negative charge? Option A, alpha particle. B, electron. C, a neutron. D, a proton. So alpha particle has positive charge, while electron is negative charge. Neutron is neutral, it don't have any charge, while the proton is also +1 charge. It means that option B is correct. Question number 38. A type of the nuclear reaction take place in star. Which row describes this type of the reaction? Nuclear reaction, nuclei formed, energy transfer. Option A, fission, larger than original nuclei, release. B, fission, smaller than original nuclei, absorbed. C, fusion, larger than original nuclei, released. D, fusion, smaller than original nuclei, absorbed. So the fusion reaction takes place in the star and a large amount of energy is released. And in the fusion reaction, small nucleus combines to form of a large nuclei. It means that the nuclei which is formed, it is larger than the original one. From here, option C is correct. Question number 39. A sample of radioactive isotope is decaying. The nuclei of which atom will decay first? Option A, it is impossible to know because radioactive decay is random. B, it is impossible to know unless the age of the material is known. C, the atom near the center will decay first because these are surrounded by more atoms. D, the atoms near to the surface will decay first because the radiation can escape more easily. So the radioactive process is a random process. It is impossible to know because radioactivity K is random. From here, option A is correct. Question number 40. A sample of radioactive isotope emits particles at a rate of 240 per minute. After 48 hours, the rate of emission has decreased to 15 per minute. What is the half-life after radioactive material? So here we have to find out the half-life. So the initial rate is 240 per minute. When the first half-life pass, then half of this amount remain. So there will be 120. This is first half-life. When the second half-life pass, then there will be 120 divided by 2, which is equal to 60. When the third half-life pass, then there will be 60 divided by 2, which is 30. When the fourth half-life pass, there will be 30 over 2, which is 15. So there is also given 15 per minute when 48 hour pass. It means that 4 half-life pass. So the number of half-lives will be equal to total time divided by half-life. We have to find out the half-life. So half-life will be equal to total time is given, which is 48 hours divided by number of half-lives. Here total 4 number of half-life passes, so there will be 4. The half-life will be equal to 12 hours. Now we see the options. Option A 4.0 hour, B 8.0 hour, C 12 hours, D 16 hours. From here, option C is correct because the half-life of the radioactive material is 12 hours.